It is busy here in Phoenix, Arizona. The fans are ready. They have infiltrated this city, getting ready for the Final Four coming up very shortly. I got to tell you, on my personal flight down, it was absolutely full of Purdue fans. However, here at the Fan Fest, looking around, a lot of NC State fans as well as Alabama and UConn. But last night we saw fireworks in the women's Final Four. South Carolina absolutely running away with their game, but it came down to the wire between Iowa and UConn, and that win for Iowa was not without controversy. Let's send it out to Hailey, Sutton, and Terrika Foster-Brasby in Ohio.
Yeah, thanks so much, Amanda. You know, you talk about all the people who were on your flight to Phoenix. As we're standing out here outside of Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, there are tons of people flooding out of this arena as they get ready for the championship game tomorrow against Iowa and South Carolina, the rematch from last year's Final Four. Terrika, before we talk about what's going down tomorrow, we got to talk about what went down last night. That controversial offensive foul that essentially ended the game for UConn, ended in favor of Iowa. We've had a chance to sleep on it. We've seen all of the stars weighing in on the conversation. LeBron James, Breanna Stewart, Kelsey Plum, Cheryl Swoops, even tapping into the conversation. So now that you've had a chance to sleep on it, we've seen the replays. How are you feeling this morning now that we've seen that play sort of play out?
Well, you know, in all honesty, I did see her move. So we agree, and even that can, you know, be argued, but we agree that there was some movement there on the play. But I think the biggest thing is that in that moment, is that really a play that you call? Is that really a foul that you call? And for most people, it's not, specifically when this game had some questionable calls throughout the entirety of it. So if you were trying to make the correct call, that might not have been the moment that most of us wanted to see that happen. So for the most part, I understand you do want to do the right thing, but at that time, with so much on the line, and given that there had been so many questionable calls throughout the entirety of the game, I think you got to let that one slide.
Paige Beckers was asked about that call, of course, after the game. She said, listen, one call does not define how a game ends. She took personal accountability, saying, I made some mistakes, but nonetheless, that's how this one played out. So it will be Iowa in back-to-back title games, the first team since the 18-19 Notre Dame squad to do the same thing. As we push this story forward, Caitlin Clark, no star, or I should say, no stranger to the spotlight. She spoke with reporters last night about her excitement going into this rematch against South Carolina.
You know, I think this matchup is, you know, you can't ask for anything better. I think it speaks to the way women's basketball has just been tremendous on all levels all throughout the year. And, you know we have our hands full. Everybody around the country knows South Carolina has been the team all year. They've deserved that. They've earned it. You know, they've just been incredible. I mean, I've turned on the TV most of the times they've played just because they're so much fun to watch. The depth that they have, the way they rebound the ball, the way they're shooting the ball, they've just been incredible.
So the thing that stood out to me there from Caitlin Clark is that she said, we know that we're going to have our hands full with this South Carolina squad. We've talked in length about the depth that the Gamecocks offer. And when you think about Caitlin Clark, she was held to just 6 points in that first half, as we touched on last night. So Terrika, in the game plan for the Iowa Hawkeyes, how can they sort of disrupt South Carolina, get Caitlin Clark and the rest of the supporting cast going tomorrow?
Well, they definitely have to play to their strength. And one of the biggest strengths that they have is that they play a fast-paced game. A couple of moments there in that game against UConn, I could see them kind of slowing it down as they were bringing the ball up and down the court. And Dawn Staley has said herself, one of the things that is challenging when you're trying to game plan against Iowa is trying to keep up with that speed, trying to keep up with their pace. So they need to use that to their advantage. But more so, just making sure that they can remain fluid. Keep moving the basketball. This South Carolina team is really good at holding players. They hold opponents to nearly 56 points a game, and you're lucky to get that against this South Carolina team. So Iowa has to continue to remain fluid and continue to play at their pace.
You mentioned Dawn Staley. She has her team primed for another national title come tomorrow. They are looking for number 3, and they are undefeated in this one. A very special moment for them. If they do win that title, they will become the 9th team in history to go undefeated and win a title. She also spoke with reporters yesterday, sharing why her team is ready for Sunday.
They're all locked in. It wasn't daycare this morning. It was, and I don't know if it's just because they just woke up, but they're locked in. Like you ask them questions, they really understand what we need to do to win, which is pretty cool to see that dynamic from this team. But I would say ever since we got into the NCAA tournament, there's a lot more focused than the regular season, meaning when it's time to prep. There's a lot more, writing notes. There's a lot more recall. So they're more locked in, and, hopefully they can get it done.
I think locked in is the perfect way to describe how this Gamecocks team has been playing. We keep talking about the depth, and I want to get into that in a little bit, but they struggled a little bit against NC State to sort of figure out the game plan in that first half. I think the difference, obviously, was Camila Cardoso stepping up, 22 points, most of them coming in the paint, sort of just banging them in there, bullying people off the ball. Now, she did get a little bit banged up in that second half yesterday. As far as we know, things are good. She is set to play tomorrow. But in terms of her gameplay here, how on earth is Iowa going to contend with someone as talented, as strong as she is in the paint?
Well, I tell you one thing, Hannah Stalkey last night against Aaliyah Edwards was undersized and a little undermatched, and you could not tell from the way that she stepped up in the paint to play. They're going to need that kind of an effort from Hannah against Camila Cardoso. She's 6'7", she imposes her will, she dominates on the glass. Ashlyn Watkins comes right behind her to continue to dominate on the glass, 20 boards from her. So they are going to have to assert themselves very early on. One thing about South Carolina is, when you think about this team from last year, they just had moments where they weren't shooting well. This year, this team can shoot. They shoot very well and often, but there are moments where they start the game kind of slow, and I think we saw a little bit of that against NC State, where offensively they got stagnant midway between that first and second quarter. They don't want to do that against Iowa, but I can tell you this, if they continue to shoot the ball the way that they did towards the end of the matchup, and Camila Cardoso gives you 22 points or more, mind you, she did that in 23 minutes.
She did.
We are in for quite a treat tomorrow for sure.
So it is Iowa, it is South Carolina, the rematch from last year's Final Four. Terrika, we know your pick, South Carolina. We've been hammering that all weekend long. The spread on this one, I believe, is about 6.5. Do you think they cover there?
Oh, no, I think they do not cover that spread. This game is going to be one that I feel is going to come down to the wire, but it's very, 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 very timely that we have seen this South Carolina team blow it open in the third quarter. This could be one of those moments where if you get a defender who can do what Nika Mule did to Caitlin Clark last night, and they come out of this second half with a Dawn Staley conversation as she has given at halftime, firing them up, this could get very ugly in the third quarter. So I think the third quarter is truly what's going to dictate how this game goes. I don't think they cover the spread, but we'll see what happens.
One final follow-up before we send things back to Amanda out in Phoenix. On one side, you've got Iowa looking to win their first national title, send their star Caitlin Clark out with a national championship. On the other side, you have a South Carolina team looking to finish the season undefeated. What's the bigger win there, in your opinion?
You know what? To me, I think that this has got to be a South Carolina team that is coming from nothing, from no one, in terms of having a completely different team, a completely different roster. This was supposed to be a rebuilding year to be undefeated in this moment. And I say that because Caitlin Clark is a star. She has broken almost every record set before her this year. She is going to be cemented in the history books of the NCAA, regardless of if she wins a championship or not. People will have to respect her. What South Carolina is doing is something no one ever foresaw coming, and I think, to me, that's a bigger storyline.
There it is. Iowa, South Carolina set to tip off in the final game of the women's basketball season. We will, of course, keep you covered as it rolls on, but for now, we'll send things back out to Amanda in Phoenix.